In most films we can find similarities to previous works. After all, art is eternally inspired by other art, and artists will often homage individuals who influence them. Usually it's through a particular quote or a shot reworked to fit into the new context. Most times it even passes unnoticed. But there is one director working at the moment whose films have inspired many across the globe. His movies have always been considered creative, innovative, puzzling, pushing the boundaries of what can be done within a film. Sometimes even a little too much. But the more you watch a Christopher Nolan film, the more you can find huge similarities to other previous titles, making the creative aspect crumble in front of your eyes. He was even cast into a moment of negative spotlight last year when a bicycle company realised the logo for the new film Tenet looked just a little too similar to their own. But let's get to things step by step. Let's start by taking for reference Interstellar and Inception, two of Chris Nolan's most famous and most popular films, and for many years, some of my favourite movies, but which with the passing of time I've begun to accept as great films, but not with the incredibly original content I once believed. For example, if we look at Interstellar, his incredible space exploration story, there are immediate similarities with Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now, Nolan has always been very open about Kubrick being one of his biggest influences. He's been watching his films since early childhood. He was one of the main figures a few years back when there was the complete restoration of A Space Odyssey and it was brought back to cinemas in a completely enhanced format. Not only, Nolan has always been very open about the influences Kubrick's work had on Interstellar. For example, one of the most famous elements in 2001: A Space Odyssey are the monoliths, huge mysterious plain black blocks. And in Interstellar, the robots who help humans were shaped based on these monoliths. There are many shots which homage space travel in Kubrick's work, even though the interactions with the robots reflect dialogues from the film. But as both plots progress, the similarities become way too striking. For example, both Interstellar and 2001: A Space Odyssey lead to the ending of the film, the climax of the movies, by a single protagonist travelling through a warped tunnel in space made of lights and distorted images to then both end up in a bedroom, where they ultimately get to think about the whole meaning of their journey, the meaning of humanity, the future and the past. You can clearly see how the creativity of Interstellar starts to crumble in front of your eyes when you realise that it's not just one particular shot, but the biggest plot twist of the whole film. But at the same time, many argue that the general plot and the film's objectives are completely different. After all, Interstellar is about a space journey, it's about a mission, it's a science fiction film about planet Earth not being suitable for human life anymore. There is a mission into space to find a new suitable home for us, whereas 2001: A Space Odyssey is more of a sudden realization of how limited the human consciousness is. It's about discovering something which has been there since before the birth of human civilization, the human evolution, our limits, and our small role in the larger chain of the universe. So although it's set on the backdrop of a space mission, some have actually compared it more to a thriller or even a horror. So Interstellar could fit in the section of extreme fanboying, but done in a very intentional and explicit manner. So what happens when not only the aesthetic is similar, but also there are huge plot elements in common and it's not that explicit? That is more the case of Nolan's film Inception, the story of a group of people who use a dream-sharing technology to enter the dreams of others, where the subconscious is totally free and they interact with the victim's mind, extracting and planting information. Now, this topic may sound like something totally new and intriguing, but in reality it's something that has been studied for many years. The subconscious, after all, is the one part of our body over which we have little to no control. There are not some external features that we can work on, such as a skin rash or broken bone. So there are many studies about the subconscious, and in particular of dreams, where the subconscious is let free. For example, scientists are trying to work on the dreams of people who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, because they relive the horrors of their life in their dreams. For example, it is the case of war veterans. But this concept of sharing dreams and actually entering them as if they are normal reality in which you can interact has rarely been seen on the big screen. That is why Inception was considered one of the most innovative and peculiar films which completely blew people's minds. The big issue is that in reality, this concept has already been covered in previous films. The first big title people immediately pointed their fingers to was Paprika. Paprika is a 2006 Japanese animated film in which a group of scientists are studying a technology by which people can access other individuals' dreams and interact with them. And what stands out most with Paprika are very recognizable shots which are incredibly similar to Inception. We're not speaking about characters carrying out common tasks, so these are very specific elements. For example, in both Inception and Paprika, we have characters fighting in a no-gravity hallway with the carpet and doors leading off the side, with people then left floating. We have the main female character walking down a street to an invisible glass wall, which when touched, smashes to pieces, revealing a different environment behind. We have explosions of objects falling all over the place, the use of elevators to move from one area of the dream to another. The scenes were just too similar. So as Nolan had never spoken about taking inspiration from Paprika, at least not on a public level which would have given a justification to certain scenes to a wide audience, the immediate reaction was that a lot of scenes were copied. To support this idea, Nolan's productions are huge. The research that goes into these films is astronomical. This is not a freshly graduated film school student who's working on a new project and didn't realise that the topic he's covering was already present in an obscure B movie released years earlier. Paprika might not be the #1 blockbuster, but it's a pretty well-known film. So here comes the question: where is the line between homaging and copying? Because even Satoshi Kon, the director of Paprika, actually homaged his favourite director, one of his favourite directors, Akira Kurosawa, in his film. And as mentioned earlier, it is common to find references across many films. Even the innovative element of planting ideas in somebody's mind by sharing dreams goes way back even before Paprika and Inception. As a matter of fact, it goes over 20 years back with a film called Dreamscape, in which a man is recruited to enter other people's dreams with the objective of studying what their plans are, what they are hiding within their subconscious. The more you search, and the more you realise it's not such a new topic. Nightmare Detective is a Japanese horror movie which features a guy who can enter people's dreams and interact with them. But at the same time, it has been extensively reported that Nolan had started working on Inception a decade before its release, placing it well before these more recent releases. So who's copying who, and is there actually somebody copying? I think this all has to do with how niche the topic is. For example, we have thousands of romantic films with very analogous plots. We even have very specific drama films which cover very comparable topics. If it's a comedy, there might be the awkward family situation. If it's a horror, the creepy demon kid. If it's an action movie, terrorists want to take down the White House. There's also the concept of twin films. So movies with very similar plots but which are released around the same period. Between 1997 and 1998, Deep Impact, Armageddon and Asteroid were released. Nobody even bothered when both Happy Feet and Surf's Up were released 1 year apart. But with these films I've been speaking about today, so Inception, Paprika, Nightmare Detective, Dreamscape, we're speaking of a very rare and specific topic. So as soon as it's covered, our ears prick up. It feels like watching The Matrix, knowing that the same concept had been made into a lesser-known film years earlier. Now, do I think that Nolan maliciously copied everything, purposefully not wanting to credit anybody? The short answer is no. The long answer is that he didn't need to get that close. He could have gone down a much more innovative and different path, and his works would have still turned out great. The films would have looked good without these direct references, probably even much better. What I don't understand is why these similarities haven't been acknowledged to a wider audience. I don't know why he doesn't tackle the topic directly. For example, there was the issue of this company, Tenet, which sells bicycle components, sportswear, etc. Look at their logo and the logo for Nolan's film Tenet. Now, when that happened, Nolan actually took the time to personally write a letter to the CEO of the company, explaining that it wasn't intentional and apologising if it had looked like that. And he proceeded to underline the love for the concept of doubles and symmetries, something which you can see a lot of in his films. And he used a really good expression, sometimes lightning strikes twice. So to sum things up, Interstellar and Inception are two great films, but which have their flaws because they're created by a human who can commit errors. A lot of times within the Nolan-loving community, there is this belief that Nolan is a sort of infallible individual. And I believe Tenet was the first big instance in which people started to question whether they should always be confident that Nolan will create something immaculately perfect. When Tenet was released, many expectations were destroyed because the bar was set way too high. He's no god, he's not perfect, for how much we would love to believe that. Also, Nolan doesn't mean only Inception and Interstellar. He's created a whole world of fantastic films out there. And all of this again proves that often many big films overshadow some lesser known movies which are also great to watch. A big budget doesn't always equal to immediate quality. But what do you think about all of this? I would love to hear your opinion. So make sure to leave a comment right below this video. Let's share our ideas on the topic. I hope you liked the video. If you did, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Bye.